IVM.
Hey everyone, episode 166 of Shunya One coming up. Amit, how are you doing today? Have you had your number? How many number of coffees have you had today so far?
So far today, I think I have had 3 cups of coffee and a Diet Coke. So my caffeine intake is fairly high. I'm excited about having this conversation, particularly caffeinated, given
Exactly.
the this and of the 3 cups of coffee, all three came from these people. So I'm a consumer.
Wow.
I was a consumer of last week's I was a consumer of last week's product, and I'm a consumer of this week's product. So it's
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah.
I think we said we'll do D2C, but we're basically doing Amit and Sheila's favorite brands. Uh, so, that's what
That
it's
is true.
sounding like. I mean, at least we're two of two right now. Last week as well, I have definitely have been an early consumer of Whole Truth, and now very much an early consumer of Blue Tokai. We're talking to Matt, the founder of Blue Tokai, today, about their story, about everything to do with specialty coffee and how they pretty much launched the whole, concept in India. And of course, they have
Yep.
us hooked and a lot of other people hooked. So if you haven't tried it out, you definitely should. And after listening to this, I'm pretty sure you will. So let's come back and talk to Matt. It will be a really fun conversation. Get your cups of coffee ready. Hey, Matt, welcome to Shunya One. How are you doing? Thanks so much for being on the show.
I'm great. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Excited as well. We are all obviously big fans of your product, of Blue Tokai, of coffee in general, of course, but Blue Tokai in particular. I mean, I think you guys have been building some great stuff. You've been obviously on the market for a while, and I think you started the wave of coffee, D2C coffee, if you may call it, in India. And congratulations on everything that's led you to this point. How's it going? How have you been? What's the story, by the way? What's your story?
My story. Well, first of all, thank you. We started this company in 2012, actually. So I'm originally from the US. I was born and brought up there. I spent a lot of time in the Bay Area at a time when specialty coffee was really taking off. So I don't know if you're familiar with Blue Bottle, but the first Blue Bottle cafe was right around the corner from my apartment. And so I would go there in the morning and grab my coffee. And that really got me interested in how coffee is sourced and roasted and brewed with a focus on quality. And I started roasting coffee on my own as a hobby.
Wow.
So I was doing finance work there, and then I transitioned into a career in international development. And that's ultimately what brought me to India. My father's Indian, so I have a lot of family in Chennai. We're from the south, and I thought it'd be fun to live in India and work here for a year. I never intended to settle here full time, but so I was working in Chennai, and then I met my wife there, and then we moved to Delhi, and this was in 2012. And in 2012, it was very difficult to get a good cup of coffee, particularly in Delhi. There was kind of the commodity coffee like Cafe Coffee Day or Barista and Costa, or there was very expensive imported coffee. So India has a 110% import duty, so you don't get to see the Ethiopian or the Colombian coffees that you would in other places because it's just cost prohibitive. So we started doing some research, and we found that although India grows really high quality beans, those beans were being exported. And what's left behind was kind of the commodity coffee. So we, as passionate coffee drinkers, we just thought, well, we'll go down south and try and connect with some of these growers. And we convinced them to sell us their export quality coffee, and that's how we started.
Brilliant. And, this was at a time when, again, you're saying this as obviously this, I'm sure you've spoken about how you've been asked about how India is a tea nation, right? So what were your initial thoughts to that? I mean, did you know you were going to be building for a niche audience, or did you even envision it becoming the scale as it is today? Like, what was your going in thoughts? Because I want to know how you got the investors to get on board also.
So actually, we started it really more as a passion project. We didn't do a lot of market analysis or even consider really India as a tea drinking nation. We felt that as consumers, we want good quality coffee. and just talking to other people in our our friend circle and network, there were other people who were also looking for this. So we felt this was something that had demand. How much demand we didn't really consider. It was more something that we wanted for ourselves, and the initial investment was quite small. We started. It really was started in a bedroom. So my wife's parents had an extra room in their house, and we had the small roaster in there, and we would turn that into our roastery, and the business operated out of their house for the first 2 years. So it was really started more out of passion rather than kind of business considerations initially.
So maybe you can talk a little bit more about what those early days were like, right? I mean, how'd you get from a roastery in your parents' extra bedroom to the point where you decided, okay, let's build some stores or cafes? Or actually, I guess my first question is, were you initially were you cafes first or were you stores first?
No, it was online first. So we started.
It was online first.
Online. And then maybe about 4 months in, we started getting some B2B business. So we started supplying other local cafes and places in Delhi. So actually, we started the business scaled naturally. It was started with our own money, and we started in one bedroom, and slowly we started taking over more and more of the house. And actually, so we started with a very small. It's a 500-gram roaster. It fits on your tabletop, but that was very unsustainable for a business, right? I was at one point spending 20 hours in front of that machine just to roast the coffee. So we upgraded to a 5 kg roaster, but it's heavy. It weighs, I think, 800 kgs. So we had to break a window in my in-laws' house, and we got a crane into their colony and crane this roaster over into their first floor.
Wow.
But for the first,
you were really taking the garage startup thing.
Yeah. we're lucky that my in-laws had a big house with amenable neighbors. So it grew. It grew to a point where we had hired, I think, 5 or 6 people, and then we were at a point in our journey where we needed to figure out: did we want to keep this kind of a mom and pop lifestyle business, or did we want to raise outside capital and scale? And then we felt that the opportunity was just too large. That coffee in general was becoming more of a phenomenon in India, and premiumization was also happening for consumer products that cheese and yogurt and all these consumer products. People were starting to trade towards better quality domestically produced products, and we just felt that if we didn't try and scale, that someone else would, and then we'd potentially just be out of. Anybody who had scaled would be easily able to take over our business. So then at that point, we started looking for investors, and in 2015 is we raised our first outside capital.
Yeah, and I remember, of course, our common friend Shoaib, who was
he was
one of the initial investors.
Part of the first set of investors, yeah.
Yeah. Being a coffee snob that he is, I expected him to. And but we've been obviously, I've tried the product ever since then. And, specialty coffee is another, like you said, it was a up and coming thing, even all the way back in 2012 and thereafter. But obviously it's exploded now. It's become a whole different, it's become a segment of its own, right? People who understand and really are quality conscious about coffee, not just outside in a cafe, but also at home. I mean, they make their own coffee. Was that also, by the way, a trend which you guys knew would happen, like this home, the fact that people are willing to make their own coffee versus just have coffee as a lifestyle drink outside, which was initially what the market seemed like it would be, because coffee was just an excuse to go out and have a drink.
I think on the specialty side of the business, it's a lot of brewing at home, because people get into kind of the geekery of getting the right bean and the right equipment and playing around with different variables to get different flavors out of the cup of coffee, whereas cafes are more just previously, I would say it was more just a place where you could go to get something that was hot and be in a clean space and have air conditioning. Whereas now, I would say with the growth of the industry, there are people who are visiting cafes because they know that they prepare the coffee in a way that they like, and they really pay attention to brewing a good cup of coffee versus just having a coffee. It's a good coffee that they're going for.
Right.
Okay, I have a somewhat related but somewhat tangential question, which is just my curiosity. What's the most popular kind of grind that people buy in India? Right. I mean, like when you look at your website, you have like all these different things.
Interesting.
You have mocha pot, and you have
Yeah,
AeroPress, and you have inverted AeroPress, and French
yeah.
press, and like all the. What do most people do here?
French press is the most common.
Really?
It's
Okay.
most convenient,
Yeah.
I guess.
Okay. What do you think
Uh,
is the as a coffee expert, and again, I know this has nothing to do with startup or tech, but right I have you here, I'll ask you the question. What do you think brings out the best flavor in like coffee, right? What kind of preparation do you think is the for a home brewing, right? Not without like crazy equipment, but like just normal for like a home thing.
Yeah, I think coffee is very personal. So what I think is the best for me is not going to be the best probably for you or for someone else.
Okay.
Like I think French press is a great entry level, very convenient, very easy way, and you can brew a good cup of coffee in it. But if you really want to kind of taste as much variety as possible, then something like an AeroPress or a pour over, you're going to be able to get more complexity of the flavors of coffee coming out when you brew it that way.
Okay. So I guess I'm half good. I do AeroPress.
The more patience you have, Amit. It's about that. I think part of the flavor is also I put so much effort into this. It must be good.
Of course.
It's a
also
ritual.
Mental satisfaction. Yeah,
it's a ritual.
It is.
It's a ritual. But I think that there, like, even for me, there are times where I brew coffee at home in the morning using a pour over, and I pay attention to all the variables. I have a scale and I have a temperature controlled kettle. And there are other times where I don't measure anything. I just pour the water in and it comes out how it comes out. And then there'll be other times where I feel even lazier and I just order coffee from Blue Tokai on Swiggy and Tomato. So I think that it's not a one size kind of fits all. Yeah, it's depending on your mood, that kind of determines how you're going to consume your coffee.
That makes sense to me.
So true. That is actually true. I mean, again, none of us are in offices. For a while now, I haven't been in, but usually offices were one of those places where you would have like copious amounts of coffee through the day. And I remember, I mean, at least I definitely got a few people to convert to Blue Tokai in the office as well, including getting like a French press and like a big size French press for large amounts. So how has that side of the business been? Like, apart from like, what was that breakout point from just people who are enthusiasts to like replacing mass market options for you? Like, and I'm talking when you said you got B2B obviously to cafes, but what about the rest of the coffee market? When did that sort of start for you, and what can you tell us about it?
I don't think there's been a breakout moment. It's been kind of a gradual evolution every single year that more and more people start appreciating the difference between better quality coffee versus commodity coffee across formats. So obviously on the home brewing, there's coffee enthusiasts who already know about that, and then there's people who have heard about it, and then they're interested in coffee, and so they start experimenting with different brewing methods. But in terms of like let's say the corporate segment, we get a lot of steadily there have been like places like a Microsoft or a Google or where they have kind of employees who maybe been exposed to better quality coffee through traveling abroad or whatever, and they start demanding better quality coffee in the office. Hey, we have this coffee machine. We don't need to have these commodity beans in here. We can just get better quality beans and it'll improve the taste of the coffee significantly. So that's happening with corporates. It's happening with hotels. It's happening with cafes, right? Cafes, many other restaurants and cafes have coffee options, but they were traditionally not really paying much attention to it. But now I think because there's a greater appreciation among consumers for better quality coffee, then cafes and restaurants feel that, okay, I can upgrade my coffee program and I can have a point of differentiation between the neighboring restaurant. And sorry, go ahead.
And do all these places also like carry your brand, or are you also doing a lot of this white label sort of a?
It depends. We don't. So if you source beans and equipment from us, and you follow a certain set of procedures, then we say that you can use the brand. Otherwise, if you just want to buy coffee and you're going to make it how you want to make it, that's also fine with us. But then we ask that you not use the brand, because ultimately if Blue Tokai is on the menu and the restaurant or whatever that we supply to, they don't care about training the baristas and they don't care about having the equipment clean, and you taste that coffee as a customer and it's not very good, then you're like, oh, Blue Tokai, what is this? This brand is crap. I had that coffee at restaurant XYZ and I didn't think it was very good. So there has to be some checks put in place, but at the same time we offer training and audits and different things to help people improve the quality of their coffee that they're doing.
How big, from the perspective of the business itself, right? What, and maybe just like kind of broadly break it down if you could, what degree happens through like online sales, whether it's your website, Swiggy, Zomato, what happens through the cafe itself, and what is this institutional piece, right? Like, how are they proportionally to each other, I guess is my question.
Yeah. So pre-COVID, we had a bigger focus on the cafe component. I think for us, as we felt that the cafes were very important to educate consumers about what's different about our coffee compared to the standard coffee available, and ultimately the what is the saying? The taste is in the pudding. I'm not saying it right, but when you taste the product, that's ultimately the best way to convert someone. So having these cafes get people into coffee and help build the brand. So because of the scale that we were at that time, expanding the cafes was quite important. So pre-COVID, around 2/3 of the revenue came from the cafes, 15, and then roughly that other third was split evenly between the B2B and the e-commerce segment. COVID obviously changed things quite a bit for us, as for many businesses. And now actually 2/3 of the revenue comes from out-of-store consumption of coffee. But a lot of the cafe, so when I say out-of-store consumption, I'm including the Swiggy and Zomato from the cafes, as well as people buying beans from the cafes to brew at home. And then similarly, B2B and the online are equal.
You know, I actually had a different question around the scale of the business, because coming back to your original, garage setup to actually this massive scale and like different lines of business, which you just explained. But on the back end, how deep did you go all the way to the source? Like, do you guys still have, do you have exclusive contracts with the farms? How much of the supply chain do you own and control, and how far back does it go? Because like you said, India is a mass coffee producing nation, and it's largely unknown. Like, not too many people really know that we are a huge coffee producing nation and we just export stuff. But how much do you control and own all the way back?
So we don't own or operate any farms ourselves. We have now it's an 8-member sourcing team who proactively visits estates throughout the country to assess the quality and look for new partners to work with, and also to provide feedback on the quality of coffee that's grown. And then in some cases, we do experiments with the estates on different processing methods. And so if when we do an experiment, then we commit that we'll buy that lot of coffee. And so then that becomes exclusive to us. And there are some estates that we work with where we buy their entire crop. But there's really a wide range. So from estates that produce a few thousand kgs to estates that produce lakhs of kgs of coffee that we work with. And in this year, we're actually doing a very interesting project where we're working with a group of 20 small-scale farmers in Tamil Nadu, and we're buying the raw coffee cherries from them. So typically when we work with a grower, we get the processed green coffee. But in this case, these small scale growers obviously don't have the capital and know-how and space to set up a processing of the coffee cherries. So what they were typically doing is they'd pick the cherry and sell it to a trader who would come by, and then that trader would sell it to a curing works, and the curing works would bulk it together and sell it as commodity coffee. But we're buying the cherries from them, and nearby we've set up a small processing unit where we're processing the coffee themselves. And so we've committed a premium. If you pick cherries that are a certain ripeness, we'll pay you a premium of X above the market price. And if at the end, after we process this coffee scores at specialty grade, we'll pay you another premium. If it is a high scoring coffee, an 85 plus point coffee, then we'll pay you an additional premium. So this is a project that we think has a lot of potential because the majority of coffee grown in India is these small scale growers. And this year, not so much the case, but in previous years, the commodity price of coffee was at such a low level that people were thinking of giving up growing coffee because it didn't make financial sense to them. Whereas if they're able to get into the specialty side, they get a significant premium, which then makes it more economically viable for them to grow coffee.
Yeah. That was actually why I asked, because if this was, how was it for you to sort of convert the mass market mentality of a farm to saying no, focus on quality? And like, I wanted to know whether they did naturally focus on quality or not, or did you have to like change their game a little bit and hence get a quality output?
I mean, so when we started, honestly, we were never in a position to come to an estate that's been growing coffee for many years and say, no, you're doing everything wrong. You have to do A, B, C, D, and then we'll source coffee from you. Now, as we've grown and we have people who have a lot of expertise in this, and we have developed our own expertise, we're more confident in that the advice that we provide to growers actually is adding value and will help them. There have been for a long time a small set of Indian growers who were focused on the specialty segment, but they were exporting it because there was not demand in India for their coffee. So the only way to realize the prices was to export their coffee. And so typically we started working with those growers in the beginning. Now, as our brand has grown, they're like every grower thinks their coffee is great, so that they'll approach us and say, "Hey, I grow this amazing coffee. Yeah, I grow this amazing coffee. How can I partner with you to sell it?" And then we say, send us some samples, we'll evaluate it and give you feedback. And if it meets the quality requirements, then we're happy to partner together.
Awesome. I mean, there's a lot more, Matt. I mean, like we've just been talking about coffee, obviously, but I definitely want to talk a lot more about even the tech and the side of how you've been able to sort of make your brand into a very friendly distribution machine. So, but we're going to take a break and come back and talk about that.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cyrus Says, Mudit Dandwate, CEO and co-founder of Dozy, tells Cyrus how he built his health tech company and survived a crocodile attack. On The Longest Constitution, Priya tells us about the history of the rights of the disabled. This started in the 1970s with the Organization of the Blind. On a show about crypto, Rohan is joined by Kash Danda, who's a founding member at Superteam DAO. They discuss whether Solana is an Ethereum killer as is commonly believed in this space. On Press Decode, Sarah and Vagda discuss the acquittal of Bishop Franco Mulakkal and whether the beautification of Purani Delhi strips it of its charm. On Postcards from Nowhere, Utsav tells us the surprising story of how money orders, Dehradun, and the transatlantic slave trade are all connected. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. And also remember, you can check out a lot of our stuff on YouTube. Go to ivmpodcast.com/YouTube and you'll get a list of all the various channels that we do have. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and CoinSwitch Kuber. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. Matt, like obviously we've been talking a lot about coffee and coffee in detail, and trust me, we can keep going. But I'd love to also talk about the fact that you guys, even at the start, decided to sell online, and you decided to sort of sell to end consumers directly instead of, going to a lot of traditional, like behind the scenes distribution routes. So what was that? What was the conscious decision around that? I obviously know like specialty coffee abroad has always sold like that, but Did you ever imagine that this D2C, direct to consumer channel, will become such a big draw? And what all have you done towards propagating it?
Yeah, I think the initial decision to sell online was the easiest. It's the easiest channel to get started on. We didn't have the scale to approach a retailer and say, hey, carry our products, and or even approach any kind of people in the B2B segment. So we were fortunate that in 2013, when we started, is when I feel like a lot of kind of the consumer online purchasing behavior was starting to pick up. Whereas if maybe we had started even a few years earlier, we wouldn't have got the initial traction to really grow our business.
Yeah.
That was kind of the initial push for it. And then as we've kind of grown, we've tried to use the online business to kind of educate consumers and help people understand and select the right coffee for them. We offer at various points in time somewhere between 15 and 20 different coffee varieties, which can be kind of overwhelming, right? Especially if you're new to coffee, and especially if you're new to specialty coffee, you won't know what to pick. So we try and orient our communication and have filters and recommenders on the website to help guide people so that they get the right coffee from the first go. We still get quite a few people who order online and complain that there's something wrong with this coffee. It's not dissolving. Why is there so much residue left over? Because they're expecting it to be instant coffee. But we have a separate communication for that and explain to them what's different. And some of them end up converting over to roasting ground.
So
Nice.
that's actually kind of an area I wanted to kind of follow up a little bit in, right? Like how do you see like the customer that you have evolving over time, right? Because especially as doing like this is the D2C special month, and we're talking to a number of different entrepreneurs in this space. So I mean, like, how do you see the profile growth, right? I mean, like in the sense that I remember like my uncles and various elder relatives used to mock the idea of going and spending 40 rupees at barista for a cup of coffee. And so compared to that today, where I mean, like $150 is not uncommon, right? If you go and sit at a cafe for a cup, how do you kind of like, what's the way that you've kind of gotten around that kind of resistance, which I think is fairly tightly it's very internalized in the Indian market, right? So what are the kind of things that you're doing to kind of get people beyond that? To look at quality versus price, the quality, and like how do you sell the quality as that high? You know what I mean? It makes sense.
I think so. There is an initial sticker shock maybe that happens, but actually our pricing strategy is to not be so we're actually cheaper than Starbucks and Costa and a lot of these places. We try and price our products in a way that obviously they're premium because the quality of coffee that we source, we have to charge a premium for that. But we don't want to make it so premium that it's luxurious. We want it to be a trade up, but not a trade up that I won't say the majority, but many people can afford. And right. and the way that we kind of sort of look at growing the overall consumer is that we feel we've been an omni-channel. So since when we started raising funding, we've been omni-channel. So we had the cafes, we had the online, we had the B2B. And we feel very strongly that all of these different channels flow together, because a consumer who visits a cafe and enjoys the coffee is probably going to want to, or maybe is more likely to be interested in brewing that coffee at home. So then baristas can explain like, oh, did you like your coffee? Here, maybe you want to get this packet and try it at home. If you don't have any brewing equipment, here's an easy pour, or here's a cold brew can. Here are different ways that you can enjoy this coffee without having to start brewing right away. And for people who have the easy pours or the cans, then we try and have communication for them that, if you like that flavor, then you can easily make this at home and bring down the cost considerably by just starting to brew. Similarly, like if you go to a restaurant and you like the coffee there, you might ask where it's from, and then if it's our coffee, then you'll hear about the brand, or by being in places like WeWork and Google, like the employees there, they taste the coffee on the machine, and then they visit the cafe, and then they flow into this funnel. So for us, having a presence across all of these channels, though it caused maybe some friction in fundraising and investors who want people to be very razor focused and pick one channel, for us, this has been our strategy from really the beginning.
And how have you from like, again, since you've been have for the last 5 years you've been running cafes, right? How have you seen the profile of customers who are coming to those cafes, or even from the online ownership, right? Like, I mean, like, how do you see that changing, right? That's what I was trying to kind of get at, like, because the evolution of, like, the people, like the same people who used to make fun of me for the 40 rupee barista coffees, right, are the same people who tell me let's go and meet at the Malakshmi Blue Tokai, or let's go and meet at Starbucks or something like that,
Right.
right? So how have you kind of got those people? Because it's you all, right? I mean, like, it's companies like you who have
Maybe
educated
you
them to
did
the
it,
point.
Amit.
Well, maybe.
I think on the online side, in the if I look at where our sales came from 5 years ago, it was 75% from Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, and now if I compare that today, that's come down to 50%. So it's really, I feel that coffee culture and an appreciation for premium coffee has really expanded beyond just the top 3 cities in the country, and there's I think the sort of the growth in brands and cafes and everything that you see helps that. In terms of the cafe demographics, we've really catered to all. I've seen, like, initially, like, if you've been to the first Sedula Job location, that was in the middle of nowhere. Especially back then, there were no other restaurants around. So you had to really be a hardcore coffee enthusiast to be willing to go in there and have a cup of coffee. Now, I think one is, apart from coffee culture increasing, is that as more cafes start serving better quality coffee, then people start getting used to that taste. And it's very difficult once you start drinking better quality coffee to then go back. Yeah. Like if I were to go to a CCD, for example, I would never order, not to pick out on a brand, but I wouldn't order a cup of coffee. I'd get like a tea. Like, I'm sure that the tea it's not premium tea, but I don't know anything about tea. So if I'm having a good quality cup of tea or a bad quality cup of tea, to me it's tea. So I'll enjoy that. Whereas I would rather have that rather than have a bad cup of coffee. So I think that's the
it changes your palate. I think that's a generational change happening with a bunch of other stuff you mentioned early on, right? This wave of like cheese and wines and everything specialty sort of kickstarted this, and I think it's just a palate change which is happening in most people, where people are understanding quality and choosing to choose quality every single time over in spite of price and barriers. But on that, just from a business standpoint of how direct selling has maybe benefited you, like have you tried have you consciously try to drive a lot of business on your direct channels so that you understand who you're selling to better, or are you now pretty much everywhere and selling on all sort of retail channels everywhere?
We've become,
what's the conscious business effort?
The majority of our effort goes into trying to to convert people on our website, but at the same time, I very much appreciate the convenience of being able to go to Amazon, and when you're adding 5 other things to your basket, to just add a cup of coffee or a bag of coffee. And actually the logistics that Amazon have are far better than using the third party, the other courier companies. And so we see a lot of people actually migrating from our website to Amazon just because of the convenience aspect. Similarly, with other channels like Big Basket or Swiggy Instamart or even retail, there's always going to be a subset of consumers who are willing to visit you and go to you specifically to buy this coffee. But I think a larger opportunity is just in the convenience aspect of being the trusted, good quality brand of coffee across channels where people are already visiting. And so actually more of our effort as we scale is going towards that rather than trying to funnel everybody to our website.
Right. So then you are the custodian of the brand and making sure people choose you always through whatever you do, wherever they choose you. Doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, for us, I mean, sorry.
No, please, you could.
I was going to say that because there's so many different use cases for coffee, like for us, what we would like to be is that anytime you want to have a good cup of coffee, whether it's the coffee that you brew at home, the coffee in your office, the restaurants that you like to visit, the supermarket, Blue Tokai would be the top of mind, and you would be able to have a good cup of coffee for us, no matter where or how you consume it.
That's pretty much been my experience, right? When I talk to most of what I've seen ordering happen, right, is Zomato or Swiggy or one of those two, depending on where you're at. But it's like somebody wants coffee right now. Okay, let's get Blue Tokai, right? And the thought is never. It's always like, you're available everywhere. Nobody really considers where you're ordering from. It's just let's get Blue Tokai, which I think is probably a win for you all.
Yeah. I think. I mean, we spend some time talking about the ritual and everything of making coffee, but at the end of the day, I think what most people care about is convenience, convenience and access more than anything, right? Yeah. And so for us, it's how can we deliver a really high quality product as conveniently and as accessibly as possible.
Yeah.
Do you see a future for...
I order breakfast, man. I order like food. Like now I've become a Blue Tokai Cafe food ordering person too. So,
do you see a future for you all in like cloud kitchens, or do you see it as continuing to be supplied from cafes in terms of this kind of like, quick service delivery type thing?
Yeah, we have done. We do have I think 6 cloud kitchens right now.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
And they are. I mean, they do work out. They are profitable, but they don't have the revenue potential that a cafe does. I think there's even if you look at the delivery that happens from a cafe versus a cloud kitchen in a similar area, the delivery that happens from a physical cafe is still much, much higher than it would be from a cloud kitchen. Just having that branding and presence so people can come in, they taste it once, and then it's much easier for them to order it again versus just starting out as a cloud kitchen only.
Okay.
So, on that note, what is the roadmap for you guys now? Like, Matt, going forward, now that you are a venture funded business, so you can't really sit back and say, let it just run. I'm sure you have very, very big, ambitious goals. So what are they, and what can we expect short of world takeover?
So we want to grow all of these business lines. We think that there's potential in every single one of them. So we'll be opening up more cafes. I mean, the goal for us is not to be a cafe company, but cafes are just one of the channels that we have that flows into this overall coffee experience. But we will be opening up more cafes in new cities. We will be focusing a lot on retail and modern trade distribution, which I would say is it's growing very rapidly for us, but it's still the smallest part of our business. But we think that there's a lot of potential there. In the office segment, with the troubles that Cafe Coffee Day has had, and some of the other brands, there's a real opportunity for a premium coffee player to expand in the office machine segment.
Yes.
So we've gotten a lot of traction there, and that's growing. And we are
what's the office machine segment?
Like the whole unit, man.
Yeah. The machines that are in the corporate offices where
the premix machines, which are shit.
All right.
But
that's I mean, like I've had them from some of the more popular ones, and they're awful. And I'm hoping that this would not be awful. So I'm curious, right?
I think it's really what you put in is what you get out, right? So if you're starting with lower quality ingredients that you put in, then ultimately you can't, no matter what magic you have, you can't turn that into a high quality product. Right. So the biggest determinant is the quality of coffee that's actually going into the machine, and then having the right machines that are able to extract the coffee properly.
Interesting.
Yes,
okay. Sorry, I interrupted you because I was just curious about this particular thing, but you were telling us about the future lines of business.
Yeah, and so the last thing that we're looking at is international expansion. So like as you mentioned, that not a lot of people think of India as a coffee producer, and certainly not as a high quality coffee producer. So when you go to like the US or Europe or even in Asia, you won't see a single estate Indian coffee on the menu. You'll see Ethiopia or Colombia or something else. But actually, the quality of coffee objectively that we source and we roast can sit on the menu of any cafe anywhere. So we think there's an opportunity to really highlight the fact that there are estates in India that are producing amazing quality coffee and taking it outside of India in a branded way.
Very cool, man. I mean, Matt, as closing notes, where do people who are obviously coffee snobs and listening to this show, or anyone else for that matter, who wants to get in touch with you, what's the best place to reach out? Your LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever you want to share, and of course, anything else you want to shout out.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. Like my email is just my name at bluetokaicoffee.com, Matt at bluetokaicoffee.com. If anybody wants to reach out, be happy to get in touch with everybody.
Cool. Awesome. I'd also just quickly remind everybody, please do rate us or review us wherever you're listening to it. And if you enjoyed this conversation we had with Matt, and if you know some fellow coffee snobs who want to hear some insights into the coffee space, do recommend this episode to them. It really does kind of help with people with spreading the word. So, and also rate us or review us wherever you're listening to us. That helps too.
Yes, and tell us which is your favorite flavor of Blue Tokai. I'm Team Attican Estate, and so
Vienna roast.
Awesome, Matt. Thank you so much. This was a really fun conversation. I think it was great catching up. It was great hearing the story. But best of all, I think it's amazing that you've been able to change a lot of our palates across the country, and I hope this only continues and gets even better, and we continue to enjoy all our coffee for many, many days to come.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be on here.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
IVM